It is time to have the conversation. We spend so much time throwing Harrison Barnes into trades and just assuming that he's not going to be on this team. And I don't think it goes without saying that Harrison Barnes was recently extended going into last season. And he's a starter on this team. And he was never benched, okay? Kevin Huerter was benched. Other guys were benched. Harrison Barnes was never benched. Now, he may not have played as much as a starter would typically play, but he was never benched. And Mike Brown, he hit you with the Nick Saban. I'm not doing it, so stop asking, okay? And people stopped asking, media, Chris, myself. We stopped asking about, hey, would you ever consider benching Harrison Barnes? But with that being said, all of the Kings fans assume that Harrison Barnes is going to be gone. But is that something that needs to happen in order for the Kings to take the next step? Now, does he have to be gone? Can he be on the team and be on the bench? Do you want to pay a bench player that type of money? Is there a world where Harrison Barnes can remain a starter and the Kings take the next step this upcoming season? Chris Watkins, what is your answer?
I just believe that, I mean, I'm sure there is a world, but I just think that if the Kings want to be serious about just leaving no doubt, especially more so before games are even played, that these guys are serious about taking a leap, to me, it's almost like a symbol of it. Like, I just think that to me is, I think Kevin Huerter can survive and be on a late round playoff team. Right. I just don't think that where Harrison Barnes is at in his career right now, I can't see it. I can't see him being the more so in the forward sense, the Robin to Keegan's Batman. I think that you have to get a better player than that at that 4 spot. When you look at the collection of just all the teams that have their that have been late round playoffs and their starting fives, to me, Harrison Barnes is probably in the bottom of bottom tiers of all of those guys. If you can come up with everybody's worst starter, it feels like Harrison would probably be in the bottom of a lot of those lists. And I just think that, to me, is the most obvious place where this team can take a massive, massive leap. And there's players, I think the other side of this is the players that are available via trade right now are all those players at that, the Brandon Ingrams, the Kyle Kuzma, even Jeremy Grant, even Mikal Bridges, the list goes on. Those are the forwards that the Kings need to be trying to address trying to get, because that, to me, fixes this team's, or at least gets them closer to being to a place where I think they want to be. Mm-hmm. And, I'm sure, like I said, I think they can maybe figure it out. But I honestly, if it's a yes or no, I'm saying that, yes, they have to replace him. Replace that starting spot. I think he can be on the team.
Would you? Okay, so and you think that they would be okay paying?
Wouldn't be ideal. It wouldn't be ideal.
That price tag for somebody that sits on the bench. And hey, they're worse misses to have.
Yeah.
There are teams paying coaches that are no longer coaching their teams. Sure. There are teams paying contracts to guys that are no longer on their team. Right. So we've seen all that before. I'll put it to you like this: it's not that it's impossible, but obviously, Kevin Huerter, you would need to upgrade. You would have to cover him. You'd have to hide him, right? You're essentially hiding Harrison Barnes, and I don't think it's worth hiding him.
Yeah.
And what is it going to cost you to hide Harrison Barnes? You know what I'm going to say. It's going to cost you Kevin Huerter, of course, and it'll probably cost you Keegan Murray to bring somebody in that will allow you. You would need 2 players to hide Harrison Barnes, and I just don't think it's worth it. So I don't think that it's impossible, but to get there, I don't think anybody would be on board to do that, right? If you got DeJounte Murray and I don't know, a 3, you get a 3 back because you say Keegan Murray is no longer untouchable, and your lineup is De'Aaron Fox, DeJounte Murray, a high-level 3. Maybe you're able to get Mikal Bridges could maybe play the 3, right?
Oh, yeah.
And then you have Harrison Barnes and Sabonis. Yeah, that would be great, but number 1, I don't think that's probably possible. Number 2, you'd have no first-round draft picks. Like we said, Rain Fox would be your next first-round draft pick, and Keegan Murray would be gone. Mm-hmm. So it's not that I think it's impossible. I just think it's improbable.
Yeah.
And I don't think it would make sense as much as we all like Harrison Barnes. I don't think there's any reason to do backflips and somersaults like Joe Mazzulla to make it work.
Yeah. I also want to say too, like, I think, like, again, Harrison Barnes, I believe, could stay on the team and like be a bench player. And I do think that, and maybe this is just hope, but I think that there could be a solution to his biggest problem by coming off the bench, because Harrison's biggest problem, in my opinion, is his lack of aggressiveness, his lack of aggression, his lack of urgency. Well, nothing adds urgency like you're coming off the bench and there's no guarantee you're going to get a second run. Like, you need to have impact in this first stint to make me want to put you in the second rotation. And so, you know, maybe you start to see a little bit more of Harrison Barnes saying, hey, I'm not playing right now with De'Aaron and Keegan and Sabonis and Monk and Herter, or a combination of those guys. It's me, and it's maybe one, maybe two of those guys. Like, I have to step it up, and it's almost going to be out of necessity. It's almost going to be forcing him to do it. And if he's still not aggressive, if he still kind of has these moments of fading away, then that's when it's really a conversation of $18 million for this guy to come off the bench is just unacceptable. Like, if he's not going to be a productive bench player either, then it starts to get to a conversation of like, not is this guy's career over, but what is his value anymore? If he's making $18 million and is falling away or fading to nothingness as a starter, and then you bring him off the bench and he can't figure out that role either. Well, what are you supposed to do? Give him Luka usage for, like, what are you supposed to do in order to make Harrison Barnes a I don't want to say a worthwhile player, but like a live up to his contract is what I would say.
Do you, and I know that he's already been in trade talks, but in a perfect world, if you're Monty McNair, there never has to be a conversation with Harrison about coming off the bench because he gets moved this summer, right? Because if he doesn't get moved this summer, but you do get a 4, right? You do get a 4. Do you come off top and say, Harrison, and this is also a Mike Brown decision, Harrison, we brought in this 4. We did the deal with Kevin Herter and a bunch of picks, so we were able to hold on to you, but we're going to go with them to start. Do you give him, hey, Harrison, we're going to start you, and then have a conversation with Mike Brown and say, hey, this whole idea, I know it's your team, so I don't want to overstep, but this idea of Harrison Barnes as a starter, I think it goes without saying, if we did upgrade that position, so we should be open to this. I don't think that's a question. Well, but
like, if you trade for Kyle Kuzma's not coming off the bench. Harrison's moving to the bench. I don't even think. I don't even think.
I just know that, and maybe, and I just know that Mike Brown, he was just so adamant.
Yeah, I think that leads to the fact that nobody's earning that spot.
But he didn't even play with the idea of, hey, and I know Trey, talked about Trey's season, but I guess Trey never really even had a stretch.
Yeah, you can't let people win things by default, especially not in the NBA. Like,
or Mike doesn't operate. I'm not just going to try someone out, even though Harrison's playing not as well as we'd like. Yeah. I'm not just going to try someone out unless that other player has been balling out, and it just didn't happen.
Yeah, no, it didn't happen. I think it's a clear talent upgrade if you're bringing in whoever, Jeremy Grant, Kyle Kuzma, Brandon Ingram. Like, I don't even know if there needs to be, I mean, you obviously are going to have a conversation with him, but he would know what it is, I would hope, at that point. And, you know, I haven't been Harrison's biggest supporter here, but I'm going to again say, like, I think he can be useful. I don't think you should just automatically throw him into the trade. The only reason why I think it's more likely than not that he gets traded is because he makes $18 million and it's just a big contract number that the Kings can throw. But as a player, again, I talked about it yesterday. Like, it would be nice if the Kings could keep Harrison and then have him as an additive length. Like, he's not himself somebody that you would say, oh yeah, that's a Jaden McDaniels type length guy. But if you have him on top of having Kyle Kuzma, Harrison Barnes, Keegan Murray, Trey Lyles on top of that, if you have depth, then that makes it a little bit more impactful. You feel it more because it's additive instead of this is what we got, if that makes sense.
Right. I mean, I think the conversation would be, and I know it's a wing-driven league, but the conversation could become, and I think you threw him in one of the deals in your monster trade, but the conversation would start to happen around Trey Lyles. I think that's what would happen. I know Trey doesn't make as much money, but you're just looking at assets that other teams would want. I mean, Trey Lyles is a bit younger than Harrison Barnes.
Well, Sasha
as well. So I think everybody is going to be on the table. And to your point about wanting the current season to finally end so we can get to this, it's not just the Kings. All these teams have so many decisions to make, and there are so many. I mean, if you look at branches on a tree, there's so many different directions that the Kings could go to get where they want to go. And I just wanted to kind of address the idea that everyone just thinks Harrison Barnes is out the door, and I don't know if that's necessarily true. It's all based on what other teams want. We've talked about why would the Pelicans want Harrison Barnes?
Right. I can figure out what a team would do with Kevin Huerter pretty easily. But like Harrison Barnes is kind of a bit of a round peg in a square hole.
Right. I mean, when you talk about Brandon Ingram, I don't know why the Pelicans would want Harrison Barnes. I could convince myself as to why the Wizards, and it's not even a want. It's we can make this work.
Yeah.
I could figure out why the Wizards might want a Harrison Barnes. Hey, keep these kids in line. Denny Avdia, some of these guys that are coming down the pipe, get them on the straight and narrow. Jordan Poole, obviously, but that is a big part of this. So when you fire up the trade generator, and I'm guilty of it too. I'm not saying that I don't do this as well. When you fire up the trade generator, you also have to think. You also have to put yourself into the other team's shoes. Why would I want this player? Yes, it works in the trade generator, but why would the Pelicans want Harrison Barnes? When they have too many wings. That's why they're getting rid of somebody who's younger and better as a wing than Harrison Barnes and Brandon Ingram.
Yeah. No, and they still have young guys that they want to play, like Jordan Hawkins, and it takes two to tango in trades, and I think that's definitely something people forget about all the time. Is that like you said, it's got to be worthwhile for both sides, and there's also a PR element of this too that I talk about where. If Harrison Barnes is the shining object that you're trying to sell your fan, but hey, Kyle Kuzma that we were, he gave up being on this championship Mavericks team because he wanted to build something here. He said he actually wanted to stay in why do I want to call it Wisconsin? Washington, not Wisconsin. Here's Harrison Barnes. Here's a guy that we replaced this dude who wanted to be here with a 31-year-old veteran who nobody's excited about. That's a tough
Kevin
sell
Huerter
job.
homecoming.
Yeah, and a Kevin Huerter. That's probably what they would honestly sell it most as. And, maybe Davion being a young point guard or something like that. But it's part of. There's PR element. There's just lots of layers. There's lots and lots of layers of it.
Coming up next, the Sactown Sports mock draft roundup. We break that down, written by our Sactown Sports Kings insiders. You don't want to miss it. Stiles and Watkins, Sactown Sports.
On the move.